continue our quest of the halachas in the workplace, business and halacha as we've been doing. We had a little bit of a break. So let's get back into the sugya. A lot of different shilas. Baruch Hashem, a lot of shilas are actually coming in as well, which is great. I'm going to try to keep some of the emails and some of the shilas so that we can go through maybe one by one. Some of the interesting shilas that the olim are asking, which I think are very practical and very nageh. Maybe faket, it's even better to discuss some of the shilas that are coming from the business people, from the workplaces, so that you guys know what is being asked out there so we can know what to do. As we always say, Rabbi Shor Salanta writes how clearly that a person, the Halacha brings Chofetz Chaim, how a person has to be so careful before he goes out into the workplace to make sure that he keeps Daled Chalkei Shulchan Aruch. There are so many halachas that a person can be over on and that a person has to know when he's involved in making money, in business, in the workplace, and we've discussed, Baruch Hashem, many of them over the last few shiurim. So I want to speak today just about one specific nekuda, and then Be'ez Hashem next week we'll go into a brand new sugya as well, Be'ez Hashem. An interesting shaila that was posed to me as follows. Is a person allowed to leave a negative review on, for example, Amazon or an Airbnb, on Uber, on a restaurant or something similar to that? Is it allowed for a person to leave a negative report? Or if you're looking into a restaurant or into an Uber, into an Airbnb or whatever, am I allowed to read the reviews and believe them? And of course we're discussing the shaila of Lashon Hara, which of course it does not only mean and is not limited to speaking Lashon Hara, but it also could be writing it, reading it, and accepting it. So there's a lot of different shilas when it comes to businesses, not only here, but for example, when it comes to recommending other people. What's the din when it comes to someone says to you, oh, you're in that field, can you recommend me someone to redecorate the office? Can you recommend me someone that does electrician, or plumbing, or advertising, or whatever it may be, and you had a bad experience, so now I want to know, can I go along and say, don't use them, they're just not, no, it's not Nagaya. They did a bad job or anything else. So am I allowed to do those sorts of things? Partnership. Someone says to you, is this a trustworthy guy? I'm going to partnership and starting a new business, trading, all sorts of shilas, lending money, borrowing money. There are so many shilas. Now it's impossible obviously for us to go through every single one of the halachas that the Chofetz Chaim mentions in his sefer. So of course every single person should be doing that. Stamazoi is the mention of Rosh Yeshiva Zeichat Tzadik V'Kodesh L'Mocha said that there was no family that he ever saw that started learning 2 halachas a day of Shmiras Haloshen and did not see a Yeshua in their lives. So of course everybody should be learning Sefer Chofetz Chaim. That's a double Poshet Ad Ma'od. But just to mention a couple of nekudas that perhaps pertain specifically to this exact case. For example, the Chofetz Chaim writes, of course, in the Akdama. We're all familiar with the Akdama of the Chofetz Chaim, where the Chofetz Chaim says it's it's because of us that there's no Beis Hamikdash. In other words, every single day that there's no Beis Hamikdash is our fault, because if it was destroyed because of Sinas Chinam, as the Gemara in Yuma tells us, which the Chofetz Chaim explains is because of Lashon Hara. Therefore, if every single day that there is no Beis Hamikdash, that Sinas Chinam, which is, as the Chofetz Chaim translates as Lashon Hara, means we're still doing it. And if we're still doing it, it's because of us that there's no Beis Hamikdash. So we are responsible for that. The Vilna Gaon, that the Chofetz Chaim mentions also, says for every moment that a person delays and muzzles his mouth not to say something that he wishes he could say, that he wants to say, that will make him popular, that will make him geschmack, that will rise him up. Zog the Heilige Vilna Gaon, but down in the Chofetz Chaim, he's zoicha to a light that even the Malachim are not zoicha to. Right? The Gemara in Baba Basra, Kuf Samachei, that everyone, unfortunately, is even over on Avak Lashon Hara. Avak Lashon Hara is the dust of Lashon Hara. It's a much lower level. But Zog the Gemara in Baba Basra, Kuf Samachei, everyone, Kulam is the Lashon Gemara, everyone is, unfortunately, Nikshal in this Gavaldiga, unfortunate Aveira. Now, let us move on. Is there a shaila of Lashon Hara when it comes to a goy? Is there a problem when speaking about a goy? If it's a goyish restaurant, a goyish Airbnb company, whatever it may be, is that a problem when it comes to a goy? So if you look, for example, in the Rambam in Hilchas Deis, in Perek Zayin, brings down chaveiroi. It has to be chaveiroi. And the question is, what's the definition of chaveiroi? We cannot have time to go through all the intricate details over here. Interestingly enough, the Chofetz Chaim and this is in Avas Chesed, in Chelik Aleph and Perik Hey, the Chavetz Chaim brings that a goy is not included in Achicha, which would be mashma, that according to the Chavetz Chaim, there's no issur in speaking Lashon Hara about a goy. However, the Chavetz Chaim, his entire sefer in Shmiras HaLashon and Chavetz Chaim does not mention this halacha, and therefore we have no klip sak in that way. Many hold that it is a problem, especially obviously we're dealing with shalis of Kiddush Hashem and Chilul Hashem and everything else included in there, and that's why a person has to be very careful. The Chavetz Chaim, when he talks about in the Psicha, in Asay Dalad, brings down how careful a person has to be when he recommends somebody else to make sure that he does it with the right intention, he does it with the right kavanah, and he doesn't exaggerate, and there are 7 conditions that we're not going to have time to go into. But that is, a person has to be very careful in recommending someone into a business or someone else's company, whether a good company or they had a good craftsmanship or professionalism, whatever it may be. So going back to our shaila, let's go back now to our original shaila. Am I allowed to leave a negative review on Amazon, right? For example, for sure if the seller is Jewish, or an Airbnb, a taxi, Uber, a restaurant, or something similar to that? And of course, am I allowed to be mekabel? So let's start number 1. If, for example, the person is doing something wrong, if the seller made a mistake, he's doing something wrong, he's actually bad, it's actually a bad situation, then it would be mutter to speak or to write a bad review about him, providing that you have the 7 conditions that the Chavetz Chaim clearly outlines in his sefer. For example, don't exaggerate, you know it firsthand, all of these things you have to have in mind. But if the person is actually doing something wrong and you know that, then that would be mutter to leave a negative review so that other people also do not fall under the same situation. Now, what if the guy generally is not doing something wrong? You didn't like the services, it didn't work for you, you didn't enjoy the food, whatever it could be, right? He did nothing wrong, I just didn't like it, I had a bad experience. I'm sure many people don't have a bad experience. So he did nothing wrong in that case. I used Amazon, I didn't like it, I had a problem with the situation, but he didn't do anything wrong. So what's the din over there? So then, without feedback, we have to understand that many businesses only work through feedback, right? So for example, somebody said to me they would never get into an Uber if they would not be able to see the reviews on the driver that other people have rated him, so other people know whether he's good or bad. I would never get into such an Uber, somebody told me. So if that's the case, and most of these companies like Uber and Amazon, when they sign up to be a seller or to be a driver, they sign up knowing that there are going to be reviews, not only knowing but relying on these reviews. These reviews are part of their business. This is what gets them business, and this is what makes them become better sellers, better drivers, and everything else. And they know this when they sign up to the company, and they are okay with it. Then avada, that would be okay in that situation. And forget if they wouldn't allow the feedback, that could even be a gather of Gnevas Das, right? Because they're selling something or offering a service without asking anyone to give feedback, so nobody would know if it's true or not and what their service is like. There could be a borderline Gnevas Das, which by the way is an interesting shaila, interesting sugya, which we have to get to at a different share. Moedika shailas in Gnevas Das in the workplace. But what we'll get to Be'ez Hashem at a different time. So at the end of the day, when it comes to something like Uber and it comes to something like Amazon, where they sign up specifically to have the feedback, and the feedback is a chelik of the business, and I am being truthful about what I'm saying, not exaggerating, and not doing it to get any back, and not because I heard it from someone else, I saw it and experienced it myself, then that would be okay. When it comes to, for example, restaurants and stores that don't sign up for reviews, they don't work through reviews, they don't need the reviews, but Google, for example, has reviews on it. So what would be the din in that case where the guy didn't sign up to getting reviews, he didn't necessarily want it? So there the heta is not so simple, and the person has to be extremely careful to fulfill all of the 7 conditions that the Chavetz Chaim talks about. So people say like this: am I allowed to write that this restaurant was very, very crowded, or the clothing is very, very expensive? Now, by the way, this is not necessarily a gnai. it's not necessarily a degrading thing, right? To say that a restaurant is crowded, it's not a bad thing for care. It's a gewaldige thing, it's a maila. It's always full, it must be good. Or to say that the clothing is expensive is not necessarily a bad thing. Some people enjoy going to expensive clothing stores. It shows maybe what type of clothing they're selling. It's not necessarily a derogatory statement in that case. And what your statement, your review can actually help a customer investigate easier, which they could do themselves anyway. They can investigate the prices, they can figure out, if it's full or not. They can work on them themselves. You're simply making it easier for them to be able to do that, to do their research, and therefore would be mutter once again. Obviously, if it's obviously truthful, not exaggerating, not doing to get any back, it firsthand, all of the halachas, but that would be mutter in that case over there. Being makabel a negative statement or a negative review, that of course you shouldn't do, because the Chofetz Chaim says to be makabel avadanish. You're allowed to be choishish for it, you're allowed to be suspect for it, you're allowed to act on that suspicion as well, but to be makabel it as the absolute MS is going to be problematic. And can I write, it's a bad food situation, this is terrible, the service is horrible, the food is terrible over there. So again, remember, toyeles, people are very big to throw out. It's lo toyeles, it's constructive, it's okay, right? It's a very, very broad heta, and it doesn't allow me to say whatever I can say. What I can definitely do is I can stop people from getting the same hezek, the same damages in that case, and it doesn't allow me to say whatever I want and call it toyeles in that case. It has to be that I know what I'm talking about. It's MS. I'm not exaggerating. My kavanas are correct. All the 7 conditions that the Chofetz Chaim clearly states, which we have to learn inside probably at a different time. But a component person has to be careful. When it comes to businesses, yes, there are heterim to write reviews. Yes, there are time to read those reviews. But be very sensitive to know, as the Chofetz Chaim writes in the Psicha over there in Asay Dalet, how careful a person has to be. You say one thing about someone's business, he could lose everything. He could lose so much because you said one extra word. You are not sensitive to somebody else's parnasa. He relies on it. People trust you, and therefore, because of that, you could do tremendous damage to someone's property. Mitzvah Hashem, next week, Bez Hashem, brand new topic. Have a wonderful day.